darkness I lingered mid doubt and despair. Sin's bondage long held me a captive to care. But Jesus delivered my soul from its chains. His precious blood cleansed me from sin's guilty stains. The world and its pleasures did tempt me to stray. I saw not the danger that lurked on the way. The toils closed around me, I knew no release. But Jesus has found me and given me his peace. Get right with God, his pardon is free. Get right with God, he's waiting for thee. Our Jesus is calling, oh come unto me. Take him, O sinner, and get right with God.
Would the reader understand the agencies to be employed to the soon-coming contest? He has but to trace the record of the means which Rome employed for the same object in ages past. Would he now know Papists and Protestants united would deal with those who reject their dogmas? Let him see the spirit which Rome manifested toward the Sabbath and its defenders. Royal edicts, human councils, and church ordinances sustained by secular power were the steps by which the pagan festival attained its position of honor in the Christian world. The first public measure enforcing Sunday observance was the law enacted by Constantine, 2 years before his profession of Christianity. This edict required townspeople to rest on the venerable day of the sun, but permitted countrymen to continue their agricultural pursuits. Though originally a heathen statute, it was enforced by the emperor after his nominal acceptance of the Christian religion. The royal mandate not proving a sufficient substitute for divine authority, the Bishop of Rome soon after conferred upon the Sunday the title of the Lord's Day. Another bishop who also sought the favor of princes, and who was the special friend and flatterer of Constantine, advanced the claim that Christ had transferred the Sabbath to Sunday. Not a single testimony of the Scriptures was produced in a proof of the new doctrine. The sacred garments in which the Spirit's Sabbath was arrayed were of man's own manufacture, but they served to embolden men in trampling upon the law of God. All who desired to be honored by the world accepted the popular festival. As the papacy became firmly established, the work of Sunday exaltation was continued. For a time, the people engaged in agricultural labor when not attending church, and the name Sabbath was still attached was affected. Those in holy office were forbidden to pass judgment in any civil controversy on the Sunday. Soon after, persons of all rank were commanded to refrain from common labor, on pain of fine for freemen, and stripes in the case of servants. Later it was decreed that rich men should be punished with the loss of half of their estates, and finally, that if still obstinate they should be made slaves. The lower classes were to suffer perpetual banishment. Miracles also were called into requisition. Among other wonders, it was reported that as a husbandman, who was about to plow his field on Sunday, cleaned his plow with an iron, the iron struck fast in his hand, and for 2 years he carried it about with him, to his exceeding great pain and shame. Later, the Pope gave directions that the parish priest should admonish the violators of Sunday, and wish them to go to church and say their prayers, lest they bring some great calamity on themselves and neighbors. An ecclesiastical council brought forward the argument since so widely employed, that because persons had been struck by lightning while laboring on Sunday, it must be the Sabbath. It is apparent, said the prelates, how high the displeasure of God was upon their neglect of this day. An appeal was then made that priests and ministers, kings and princes, and all faithful people use their utmost endeavors and care that the day be restored to its honor, and, for the credit of Christianity, more devoutly observed for time to come. The degrees of councils proving insufficient, the secular authorities were besought to issue an edict that would strike terror to the hearts of the people, and force them to refrain from labor on the Sunday. As a synod held in Rome, all previous decisions were reaffirmed with greater force and solemnity. They were also incorporated into the ecclesiastical law and enforced by the civil authorities throughout nearly all Christendom. Still, the absence of scriptural authority for Sunday keeping occasioned no little embarrassment. The people questioned the right of their teachers to deny the positive declaration of Jehovah, "The seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God," in order to honor the day of the sun. To supply a lack of Bible testimony, Satan was ready with expedients. A zealous advocate of Sunday, who about the close of the 12th century visited the churches of England, was resisted by faithful witnesses for the truth. And so fruitless were his efforts that he departed from the country for a season, and cast about him for some means to enforce his teachings. When he returned, the lack was supplied, and in his after labors he met with greater success. He brought with him a roll purporting to be from God himself, and containing the needed command for Sunday observance, and awful threats to terrify the disobedient.
A striking illustration of Rome's policy toward those who disagree with her was given in the long and bloody persecution of the Waldenses, some of whom were observers of the Sabbath. Others suffered in a similar manner for their fidelity to the fourth commandment. The history of the churches of Ethiopia and Abyssinia is especially significant. Amid the gloom of the Dark Ages, the Christians of Central Africa were lost sight of and forgotten by the world, and for many centuries they enjoyed freedom in the exercise of their faith. But at last Rome learned of their existence, and the emperor of Abyssinia was soon beguiled into an acknowledgement of the Pope as the vicar of Christ. Other concessions followed. An edict was issued forbidding the observance of the Sabbath under the severest penalties. But papal tyranny soon became a yoke so galling that the Abyssinians determined to break it from their necks. After a terrible struggle, the Romanists were banished from their dominions, and the ancient faith was restored. The churches rejoiced in their freedom, and they never forgot the lesson they had learned concerning the deception, the fanaticism, and the despotic power of Rome. Within their solitary realm, they were content to remain unknown to the rest of Christendom. The churches of Africa held the Sabbath as it was held by the papal church before her complete apostasy. While they kept the seventh day in obedience to the commandment of God, they abstained from labor on the Sunday in conformity to the custom of the church. Upon obtaining supreme power, Rome had trampled upon the Sabbath of God to exalt her own. But the churches of Africa, hidden for nearly 1,000 years, did not share in this apostasy. When brought under the sway of Rome, they were forced to set aside the true and exalt the false Sabbath. But no sooner had they regained their independence than they returned to obedience to the fourth commandment. These records of the past clearly reveal the enmity of Rome toward the true Sabbath and its defenders, and the means which she employs to honor the institution of her creating. The Word of God teaches that these scenes are to be repeated, as Papists and Protestants shall unite for the exaltation of the Sunday. The prophecy of Revelation 13 declares that the power represented by the beast with lamb-like horns shall cause the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the papacy, there symbolized by the beast like unto a leopard. The beast with two horns is also to say to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast. And furthermore, it is to command all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark of the beast. It has been shown that the United States is the power represented by the beast with lamb-like horns, and that this prophecy will be fulfilled when the United States shall enforce Sunday observance, which Rome claims as the special acknowledgement of her supremacy. But in this homage to the papacy, the United States will not be alone. The influence of Rome in the countries that once acknowledged her dominion is still far from being destroyed, and prophecy foretells a restoration of her power. I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Revelation 13:3. The infliction of the deadly wound points to the abolition of the papacy in 1798. After this, says the prophet, his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Paul states plainly that the man of sin will continue until the second advent, 2 Thessalonians 2:8. To the very close of time, he will carry forward his work of deception. And the Revelator declares, also referring to the papacy, all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life. Revelation 13:8. In both the Old and the New World, papacy will receive homage in the honor paid to the Sunday institution that rests solely upon the authority of the Romish Church.
These records of the past clearly reveal the enmity of Rome toward the true Sabbath and its defenders, and the means which she employs to honor the institution of her creating. The Word of God teaches that these scenes are to be repeated as Papists and Protestants shall unite for the exaltation of the Sunday. For nearly 40 years, Sabbath reformers have presented this testimony to the world. In the events now taking place, is seen a rapid advance toward the fulfillment of the prediction. There is the same claim of divine authority for Sunday keeping, and the same lack of scriptural evidence as in the days of papal supremacy. The assertion that God's judgments are visited upon men for their violation of the Sunday Sabbath will be repeated. Already it is beginning to be urged. Marvelous in her shrewdness and cunning is the Roman Church. She can read what is to be. She bides her time, seeing that the Protestant churches are paying her homage in their acceptance of the false Sabbath, and that they are preparing to employ the very means which she herself employed in bygone days. Those who reject the light of truth will yet seek the aid of this self-styled infallible power to exalt an institution that originated with her. How readily she will come to the help of Protestants in this work. It is not difficult to conjecture who understands better than Popery how to deal with those who are disobedient to the Church. The Christian world will learn what Romanism really is when it is too late to escape the snare. She is silently growing into power. Her doctrines are exerting her influence in legislative halls, in the churches, and in the hearts of men. Throughout the land, she is piling up her lofty and massive structures, in the secret recesses of which her former persecutions will be repeated. She is steadily and unsuspectedly strengthening her forces to further her own ends when the time shall come for her to strike. All that she desires is vantage ground, and this is soon to be given her. In the near future, we shall see and shall feel what the purpose of Roman element is. Whoever shall believe and obey the word of God will thereby incur reproach and persecution. This ends the portion reading in the chapter The character and aims of the papacy in the Great Controversy. Maranatha, let us watch and pray. God bless.
Get right with God, His pardon is free. Get right with God, He's waiting for thee. Our Jesus is calling, oh come unto me. Take Him, O sinner,